Welcome from the deep. I am Mike the Finder.
And I am Book of Brett.
And today we are talking about the 2012 film Maniac. Now, this is officially a remake. We don't typically talk about remakes on here because if you've been watching us for a little bit, you know our general feelings on remakes. And
usually terrible.
They're usually pretty terrible, but this is slightly different, which is why I think we want to talk about this movie today. It was my choice.
Yes, 100%.
It was my choice on this movie.
As you would expect from a movie that's a slasher and called Maniac.
Right. I think that this movie is, in the horror community at least, the original, I think it's 1980, I think. The original is like...
It looks like it's out of the 70s.
It might be. But I think it may have been shot during the 70s. And actually released in 80. I could be wrong there. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. The original in the horror community is like kind of a cult classic because it's crazy and it's weird and dark and it's gritty and grimy. And you and I watched it together. And you don't really remember much of it, which is unfortunate. I do remember you being wildly upset and uncomfortable throughout
I wonder why I don't remember it.
Pretty much the whole movie.
my brain's over here just like, no, we don't need that as a reference for anything.
So when I brought this up, I was kind of bummed you didn't really remember the original. Now we did before we started recording, just watch the trailer for the original, and you said you do remember the main guy from it.
I do. I remember his missing incisors.
Yeah, he's definitely, you definitely remember his face. This is what's so weird about the remake is Elijah Wood is like a weird choice to replace Frank in the remake. They're almost total opposites.
I think that's part of what makes this movie work so well, though, because like even as a standalone movie, like even as a remake, but without any reference to the original, he works perfectly.
He does.
He works perfectly because this movie just not to jump ahead or anything, but this movie does so much so well.
Yeah.
So well.
Well, so I'm glad to hear you say that, but let's not jump ahead too much. As we usually do, let's jump over to IMDb here, get a one-sentence synopsis. As he helps a young artist with her upcoming exhibition, the owner of a mannequin shop's deadly suppressed desires come to the surface. Like I said, this is from 2012. It's an hour and 29 minutes, and the director is Frank Calfoun. I know I'm screwing that up. I'm so bad with people's names. If we look at his IMDb here, he actually doesn't have that many credits. As a director, he's directed Entry Level, Prey, Amityville: The Awakening, which is okay. Lifer, never seen it. I Lived, have not seen it. Maniac, Wrong Turn at Tahoe, have not seen it. And P2. So I am wildly unfamiliar with this director's work. So for me, this is kind of a one-off as far as that goes, because I haven't, after having rewatched this today, I do kind of feel like maybe I should go back and watch some of his other stuff, because if it's like this,
him and the cinematographer.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's just start out, I guess, with the with your overall thoughts on this movie.
I've got. It's really hard to condense it down because my notes were taken about specific aspects, but I think one thing that really says a lot about this movie is the fact that usually my notes are, especially if I don't like a movie, my notes are very like nitpicky about like this was stupid here, this was stupid here. It's not more of like an overall notes. And this I was able to there's so much going on in each scene and each frame of every scene that it was really easy to dissect this thing as a whole, even going from frame to frame and scene to scene. Overall, this movie is, for lack of a better phrase, this movie is incredible. This movie is absolutely incredible.
I'm so glad to hear you say that.
I love this movie. I mean, almost everything in this movie is done so well, and not even from a filmmaking standpoint. I mean, there is a lot to pick apart here psychologically.
Yeah.
I mean, psychologically from the character's perspective, psychologically on how they make us feel through the cinematography, psychologically on how they make us empathize with the characters and the people that are going through all this stuff. And there's so much going on in this movie, and I gotta say, Elijah Wood has got to be the perfect pick for Frank, especially with the way they wanted to portray Frank. The way they wanted to portray Frank is complemented by Elijah Wood's performance. Elijah Wood's performance is complemented by the way that they wanted to portray him. You feel for him, but you're afraid of him. You're uncomfortable with him, but you're almost rooting for him in certain points. We have here probably one of the most psychologically complex slasher villains I have ever seen.
Well, I think the thing that makes this movie work for me is how it's almost just a straight up character study. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of that way in the original too. Where you really just follow this guy around and get to know sort of his routine and how he does things. And I know for a fact Elijah Wood is super into horror movies. I know that he loves this movie specifically, the original. And you can really see him like trying to live up to the Frank from the original, because the original is really dark and, for lack of a better word, really f***ed up. And this movie is too, but what they did correctly is they didn't just remake the movie the way that you usually would think of a remake happening. They flipped it on its side by making it POV.
Yep.
Like,
which is
90% of the time.
Riskiest goddamn things you can do.
Well, and that's what's so interesting and about why we both like the cinematography so much, because they're able to frame things perfectly, but also turn it into POV stuff. And there's several shots where it's framed beautifully, and then he turns his head and it's right back to POV, and you would never have thought like that's what it was going to go to.
Well, and that's the biggest thing that stuck out with the cinematography to me here. Anything that's going on in real time is a POV shot.
Yes.
The only time we break away and actually have a fourth wall of any kind is when he's remembering or imagining, or when he's killing, or sometimes when he's killing.
Right. So, well, and that's the thing. It's the second half of this movie was when that starts to happen. When everything starts to fall apart, it almost is like he's not comfortable with the things that he's doing. So in order to black them out, we see things from a third person view rather than the way we've been seeing them the whole time.
Well, and I think it really works well because of the very first kill that we get, or not the first one, the second one with the redhead, Red Lucy. That's when we really see this duality of his psychology. And that was a thing that this is where we get into a whole other aspect of this movie, which is the representation of the psychology of a sociopathic serial killer, a real life sociopathic serial killer, where, I mean, if like someone like me, like I'm obsessed with like true crime and stuff like that. And so there are a lot of like serial killer documentaries and podcasts that I've listened to. And one thing you'll hear all the time, or not all the time, but a lot of the times is you'll hear them say like, you know, I it's a compulsion to kill. It's almost like something they don't want, like a drug addiction almost. And we do get that duality in there, but we also get the sexual aspect of a serial killer's mind, which is this sexual obsession that manifests itself in violent ways. And that's why I say this movie is so psychologically complex and in depth, but it's POV.
Yeah, well, I think
it's POV, and they did all of this.
The reason we're able to like follow his thoughts so well without him like narrating, a lot of it is because they literally show us his childhood trauma, and they literally show why the things that he's doing are manifesting in the way that they are. And that is what's so goddamn interesting about this movie. The other side of it is that it is genuinely terrifying, and the kills are hardcore. Like, this is a hardcore horror movie.
I made the dog worried because there were several moments where out loud I'm going, oh, oh, oh. And she like came running in the room because I was like so uncomfortable. And I was on my couch. No one's home. It's just me and the animals. I'm in a very comfortable environment. And outwardly I'm going, oh, it made me so uncomfortable. The scalping, like, especially when he goes and he scalps that woman while she's still alive. Like, that was intense, man. It was really, really intense.
Yeah, well, and that's a good word for the whole thing. The fact that this is made in 2012 is nuts, because I think of like 2000 all the way up to like 2015 or 2016 as generally not a whole lot of good stuff came out as far as horror goes.
I would say early 2000s to now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't remember when The Witch came out. That had to have been like 2014, 2015, maybe. I can't quite remember.
Everything.
That's true. But I feel like this is kind of ahead of the curve as far as art house horror goes. This is the most stylistic, perfectly portrayed movie, I especially a remake that I can think of in the last 10 or 15 years.
100%.
That's 100%. What's crazy about
this. This movie is this movie's pretty goddamn perfect. I'm not gonna lie. Like, well, I didn't have anything bad to say about it, but this is the really funny thing. Usually when we both really like something, we have fuck all to say about it.
Right.
And there is so much to say about it. And this, I feel like, is the perfect your interest and my interest movie.
That is exactly why I chose it. Yes.
It is art house. It is art house, but it is so not up its own ass.
No.
It's not, the writer and the director's egos aren't coming through the characters.
Right.
And I feel like that's what happens so much with art house movies. Is it's the writers or the directors or the above the line people sitting there going like, these are my characters and this is how I want them to act. And it's why I can't get into art house. But this is definitely an art house movie without being a pretentious art house movie, and not just in the characters, but in the cinematography too. Because even nowadays we get art house movies, and what do we get? We get turquoise and we get magenta on everything,
or pink like Mandy, pink and
or
red,
or pink like Mandy. Exactly.
Have you seen Mandy?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, but and again, it's because of that color palette.
Well, I mean, just to get off topic for just a second, dude, you got to watch Mandy. If you like this, I really think you're going to like Mandy. I
like Nicolas Cage.
It's way different. I'm not saying that it's a POV horror movie or anything.
Yeah.
It is way different. But Mandy is hyper stylized in a way that makes sense to the story that they're telling. And that is something that you and I talk about all the time, where it's okay to have these super stylized movies, but it has to play in to the story in a compelling way for it to make sense. One of the reasons I think you and I both love Wes Anderson movies is because he is a master at this. His atmosphere and the way everybody speaks and talks and feels fits into the world that he's creating. In the same way, Maniac here is exactly the same. The world building is phenomenal. You feel like you're there because you've been put into his POV, and you start to almost, like you said earlier, almost root for the guy, even though he's this horrible, awful person, because we are shown his childhood trauma and because we are shown basically A to Z on why he's doing what he's doing and the way that all of these things have started to manifest. You almost feel bad for him. And
because he's so clearly desperate for human connection.
Yes.
That's actually what made the relationship with Anna such a roller coaster for me. There are so many points in this movie where I'm going, oh, he's going to kill. Oh, maybe he won't kill her. Oh, he's going to kill. Oh, maybe he won't killer. Like, you know, like going back and forth and back and forth from the very, very get-go. You can see him. This is where his longing for human connection, like, really comes out, because even at the beginning with Lucy, like it really could be interpreted as him using the internet as a device to find women.
Right.
And so it's not really made clear, this human connection aspect, just yet. And then when Anna comes along, part of me is sitting here going like, oh, good for him. And then the other part of me is going, look what he does, though.
Well, and that's the thing, is because you meet Anna after he meets the girl on the internet, right? And that is why the whole Anna thing works. After he kills Lucy, he's basically freaking out in her apartment. Like, why can't I have just one? Implying that he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he cannot help himself. And so that's one of the reasons that I think the Anna situation hits so hard, because you can tell he genuinely likes her. The way she's lit in this movie, it's always angelic. It's always backlit or over the top. The way that the lighting and the cinematography tell you how he feels about this, while simultaneously being POV and super dark and gritty at the same time. It's crazy how they even accomplished that. Dude, it's just masterfully done. The storytelling in this is phenomenal. The cinematography is perfect. And it all ties, and the lighting, it all ties together so well in a way that really makes you feel for this guy, despite the horrible shit that he's doing. And that is why this remake works so well. If it was just another slasher and you just kind of modernize it, it doesn't really do a whole lot. But when you give it the emotional depth that Maniac 2012 has, it changes it from a remake into almost a better movie. And that's why this is a crazy remake, because
even the environment that they set it in. I mean, I know it's originally set in New York, right?
I think so. I think so. Let me double check that. I'm 90% sure.
Well, because I thought at one point, like, Anna says, like, her boyfriend went back to New York, and that's what confused me.
Right.
But either way,
I believe they set this in LA. I could be wrong.
Anyway, the environment in this movie works so well too, because there are so many scenes in here where if you weren't in a big city, it'd be like, well, how is he getting away with being that close to them? How is he getting away with being right near them and them not noticing him? But in a big city, everybody's crammed together so close, and everybody's doing, anybody that's ever lived in a big city will know, everybody's doing all they can to not notice the people around them. And that lends itself so well to this movie, because it lets him get away with things that still fit in the realm of reality.
So I just found it. This does take place in LA. The original did take place in New York.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
no, a lot of this movie just looked like it was in New York to me.
Well, and I think they did that on purpose, because a lot of what they showed was not typical LA stuff. It's the actual city, which is not something a lot of people focus on in LA. It's generally
because it's depressing.
I want to talk about Frank for a second.
Frankie.
I want to know why, for you, he works as a sympathetic character, because this is something we both touched on now. And I want to know why, for you, he's sympathetic, or you can be empathetic towards him, even though he's a horrible person.
Because of Elijah Wood. Because Elijah Wood looks and portrays him in a way that is pathetic. Because he's pathetic. And you feel so bad for, well, I mean, you're going to do one, your reaction is going to be one of two things, depending on what kind of person you are. You're either pathetic and you're almost rooting for him, or he's pathetic and you want him to be, and you kind of want to bully him a little bit. I fall into the former. Just saying, there are people out there that look at it that way.
So you're basically Anna's boyfriend in the bathroom scene. Carrie, where you're
not at all.
wiping his hands on him.
Not at all. I wanted him to murder that person so bad because I felt bad for him. Because I felt bad for Frank.
But
and
you're saying even though it's POV, it's because it's Elijah Wood.
Yes, because Elijah Wood just kills it in this. The dude just kills it. And it's not just his voice, it's his facial expressions, it's his face. His face is just, he's got those really, really sympathetic eyes. Elijah Wood, let's just acknowledge this. Elijah Wood has probably the prettiest eyes of any male actor in Hollywood anyway. I know that's weird to say, but if you watch him in movies, his eyes, I don't mean that in like a weird way. I'm coming to a point. If you watch him in movies, his eyes always pop on screen, and it's been like that since he was a kid, since like The Good Son.
Well, he's also really good at portraying a psychopath, and like Sin City is a good example of this.
That's a good point. I forgot about Sin City.
If you've watched through Wilfred, he's phenomenal in Wilfred. He's exactly what you're describing. He's kind of insane, but he's also, you feel super bad for him because he kind of comes off as a pathetic loser, for lack of a better term, I guess. And that's, I think, why he works for me too. It's not that it's Elijah Wood. It's the fact that we are seeing through his eyes why he's doing the things that he's doing. And that is something typically in slashers, especially, that you do not get. Most of the time, it's a very shallow, surface level reason that they give for him doing the things that he's doing. Like, maybe Jason's not a great example. His mother in the first one is maybe a better example. Her son drowned. We don't really get to empathize with her throughout the movie. We get to empathize with her toward the end, when she starts to just sort of like just word vomit all of the stuff of why she's doing what she's doing. And most slashers are like that, where you don't really understand why the killer is doing the things that he's doing. Michael Myers is another good example of this. We don't really know why Michael Myers snapped when he was a kid. We don't know why he does the things that he does. That's kind of the reason Michael Myers works, and why most slasher films have that same setup, because it's scarier when you don't know what is going through the killer's head. This takes a completely opposite turn of that and lets you know exactly why he's doing the things that he's doing. And that is why it's terrifying. And not many horror movies do that.
Do you know what I just realized? His character, Frank, is incredibly similar to Norman Bates.
Yes. Yeah, he is.
He is incredibly similar to Norman Bates. And my feelings for him are incredibly similar to Norman Bates, where he's this terrifying murderer, serial killer, but there's an aspect of you where you feel bad for him because of the trauma, but also because you know he doesn't really want to, and because he can't stop himself.
Right.
And again, Norman Bates is another character that is a really, really good depiction of the psychology of a serial killer. And that's why I think Elijah Wood works so well in this, because it's I believe this could happen. I would hope, I would like to think this never would, but this is believable.
Yeah, it almost feels like somebody just did it and filmed it. Okay, well, we've been talking about this for a while. I knew we would have a lot to say, but do you have any other things you want to hit before we move on to the ending?
No. Let's do it. Let's get into the ending. Spoiler alert. There are spoilers in this. And the ending is the only single part of this movie, not the whole ending. One aspect of one scene of the ending of this movie is the only time I had an issue.
Can I guess what it is?
You can, but I don't know if you'll be correct.
That Anna gets killed or knocked out or almost killed by going 5 miles an hour, and she flies through the windshield when they're driving maybe 15 tops.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, that scene, but no, because it's a different reason.
I feel like the only reason I have a problem with that is because of the way it's filmed. Despite all the good cinematography, it's filmed in such a way that doesn't feel like they have enough momentum for her to go flying through the windshield.
I think,
and not to mention kill the driver.
For me, I think the reason that ends up happening is because this movie is almost all practical effects.
There's a lot of CGI blood.
There's a lot of CGI blood, but like the makeup, the violence, a lot of that is not CGI.
Yeah.
And so I think they were trying to avoid that as much as possible. And I think that's why we end up getting that. My issue is she didn't have control over the pedals.
Right.
So why is the driver driving like she's the one driving? And why doesn't the driver stop before he hits the wall?
Or the other thing is like
before you hit the wall.
I don't know if somebody ran up to my car screaming like that. My first reaction would be, yes, let them in. My second reaction would probably not be, let's run the guy that's chasing her over.
No, it would be, let's go back the other way because I know it's clear.
Right. So that is definitely, I will agree with you on that. That was the only point in the movie. I've seen this several times. And I felt like this time that was the biggest issue I had with it, that whole thing doesn't entirely make a lot of sense.
No.
But that's such a small nitpick for the overall.
Yes, it is completely overshadowed by the beauty of the end.
Yeah, the actual end.
The actual end of this movie is so grotesquely beautiful.
Yes.
That it is just, the ending to this movie is the only way you can end it.
Well, and so
this is the only way it ends.
Okay, so the ending is right out of the original.
Is it? Okay.
It is. And that was the scene that I know you don't remember it, but when we were watching the original Maniac, that was the scene that you basically tapped out and left. Like you had tapped out because we had sat through so much of this, and you can imagine it in the 70s and the 80s. Stuff was not as beautiful about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, let's blow this guy's head off or whatever with a shotgun. And so there's a lot more just gore and violence for violence sake. When in this, most of it feels like it serves a purpose, right?
I would agree with that.
And the ending is the original ending from the movie where he is dying and laying on the bed. But in my opinion, they do it a little bit better. And it's because it's the way it's shot. And it feels like and my favorite part about it is they don't even find him on the bed. They find him in the closet. And so all of that was actually happening in his brain, and none of it was actually happening. Right. But I feel like in the original, he's actually laying on the bed, which I always kind of thought gave it a little less emotional punch, because like you don't really know if it's in his brain or whatever. It's a little bit less clear. And in this, when the cops find him, he's in the closet and he's having imagined all of this stuff. And it's the perfect ending. It is the only way this movie could have ended, because everything gets wrapped up so nicely. It's so satisfying. It's so satisfying to see him. It kind of sucks that he never gets caught or never gets, whatever. But the fact that Anna is the one that has killed him is beautiful. It's just, I don't know, man. I love everything about this movie. This is exactly up my alley. If I was going to make a horror movie, I would try to attain the same type of beauty that this movie attains, with its cinematography, its lighting, and the just fucking spectacular performance from Elijah Wood. It is, it might be my favorite performance of his entire career. And that's over Lord of the Rings. That's over Sin City, all of it. I think this is Wilford.
This is a solo show now.
He's so good as Frank in this. And you can just tell the guy watched and loved the original movie and wanted to portray Frank in a way that lets you feel more empathetic towards him, while also keeping the original craziness that is that character. Okay, well, let's get your final thoughts and a rating on this, and we'll wrap all this up.
I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna buy a physical copy of this.
Yeah.
This is one of the best slasher movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hands down. This is like ever. This is one of the, and I was not expecting that going into this. I went into this going, like, this is another Mike movie. We're going to watch another Mike movie, and it's going to go one of two ways, and it's not going to go the art house way because it's called Maniac, and it's a slasher, which means I'm going to sit here through terrible acting, terrible cinematography, and just watch something to have fun, which is fine. But that's what I was expecting. I was expecting a fun slasher movie, and what I got was a masterpiece and a master class in filmmaking. This movie is a master class in filmmaking. And somebody's going to be out there and be like, I don't think it was that good. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
What?
It's that good.
I think specifically a masterclass in art house horror because of the tension building. The tension building in this movie is phenomenal, and it's exactly how you should be playing with people's emotions with horror. Yeah. Most horror, especially newer horror, which is why this is so crazy. And on top of that, it's a remake. That's what's so nuts about it.
If Hitchcock was alive today and he remade Maniac, this is what he would have made.
Well, it does feel like
feels very Hitchcockian.
This is the evolution of what classic horror should be. Because most horror movies, this is what I was about to say a second ago. Most horror movies get this leg jerk reaction to jump scare you and to just gross you out and to just put violence in there for violence. This is why I like Texas Chainsaw 2 so much. You don't need ultra gore and violence to make stuff scary. There is some seriously messed up stuff in this movie as far as gore goes. For sure. For sure. But it is surrounded in such a way that gore makes sense for the story that they are telling and to tension build. And that is why this movie works so much. This is absolutely a masterclass in filmmaking, but specifically horror. I feel the same way about this as I do The Witch. There is a way for you to make horror movies that is not jump scare, gory, gore porn, for lack of a better word. And it is this. This is the perfect example of that.
I do have to say this before we wrap up. Something we did not mention is the special effects. The special effects in this movie are incredible.
Absolutely.
Like, especially in the very, 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 very last scene when he's being ripped apart and his face, like it's his face, but it's still being torn apart while he's acting. It's this these special effects in this.
It's flawless.
And we don't mention special effects often enough, mostly because Mike and I's interest is camera work and cinematography. The special effects in this are just astoundingly good, though.
You know what I also want to touch on is the poster from the original movie is recreated in this movie after he kills the girl in the parking lot. And he stands there with the thing. Let me show you. Hang on. This is, if you remember, the reflection in the car door after he kills the girl in the parking lot, and that just made my fanboy heart just sing with joy.
It's signed by Tom Savini, you said?
Yeah.
What is the soonest flight to Florida?
It could be fake. I don't think it is, though. But either way, this is the cover art that they recreate in the movie, and it's awesome. So
dope.
Okay, well, what are you going to rate this movie?
Dude, it's 10 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
It's perfect.
This is a 10 out of 10 movie.
It's perfect.
It's perfect in almost every single way. And it's the length of it is good. It's an hour and a half. They accomplish so much in an hour and a half. And they use their time perfectly with it. The script is great. The acting is phenomenal. The cinematography is perfect. All of it is good. This is the first time you and I have both rated something 10 out of 10. And it might be the first time. It may be the first 10 on this channel, I think, actually, now that I think about it.
I was going to say, I don't think I've ever listed anything 10 out of 10. Yeah, I'm telling you, man, I was blown away. Completely blown away.
I am so glad to hear that. I was hoping you would like this because, like you said, this is the perfect, if there was a Venn diagram of your interests and my interests as far as movies go, this sits
just be one circle.
Yeah. Cool. If you like this, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Let us know your thoughts about Maniac 2012 and how it relates to being a remake. And specifically, if it's better or worse than the original, in your opinion. Thank you guys for watching so much. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments, and we will see you guys next time from the deep. Oh, f it. Bye.
Ta-ta.